Let's talk about the next couple of months that are coming up, very busy. Vandemonian Lags, the Convict musical, I suppose you could call it, playing dates throughout May. Just basically, what's it about and how did it come about?
Vandemonian Lags came about via my brother, and as a play, you'd sort of say it's the theatre show of the album, of the website, of the research project, you know. So it's had all these kind of incarnations, and what it basically stems from is that there was this archive of records of the basically the convict population that existed in Tasmania. It stayed in the Tasmanian Museum in Hobart for years and years, and just collected dust in the, you know, in the back room. And then they found that people were actually breaking in to sort of doctor the archive, to sort of get rid of their family history. And so they moved it to the penitentiary chapel, where it sat for another 10, 15 years. And then they decided to redo the penitentiary chapel as a tourist landmark in a Hobart. And lo and behold, these records are just sitting there, you know, just like these books of just... So they recorded what happened. Every prisoner that stepped ashore, the 70,000 of them, you know, up until the mid-1800s, they recorded everything about them, you know. They recorded their tattoos, they measured them, they weighed them, they wrote down where they were from, or what they were sentenced for. They just, and like UNESCO ratified this as the great, that UNESCO have rated it as the greatest and most detailed record of a working class population for that period in the world, you know. So it's this fantastic thing, and there's some historians down there got a hold of it, and they said, well, yeah, people have got to see this, you know. And so it fell to sort of my brother's film company. They make films, they make, you know, documentaries and stuff called Raw Film. They work out of Hobart, and it sort of fell to them. So they just sort of started this website basically, and they wanted the stories on there, but they wanted them not in such dry, you know, historical form. They wanted them as film clips. They said, you know, they wanted it to be like Convict MTV, you know, like they wanted film clips, they wanted songs. And so it was a glorious thing for me to be involved in, because they just started feeding me the things. And I just said, well, look, I don't want this just to be like this mega work of Mick Thomas. So I just started feeding him out to Van Walker and just to anyone that I knew, you know, Adam Gibson from the Aerial Maps, or Liz Stringer, or anyone that I knew. I just started saying, hey, here's a good story, you know. Here's just, and it was great because they just sent me the stories. Each file would have a name, and the name would just be the person, you know. Anne Myers, Thomas Brunel, these names. But they all had these great stories attached to them. So I just send them out to other people, you know, just forward them on. And Rory McLeod in England, or who else? Swill Odgers from The Men They Couldn't Hang. Just people. There really was no more than the people that I knew that I could sort of get in touch with, and we just started building up this store of songs, and then just started recording them. And when the website got launched, I went down to Hobart for the launch, and there was myself and Ben Salter was there, because he lives down there. And they said, well, can you do a few of the songs? And so I think we worked out, you know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of the songs, and we worked out little introductions which told the stories, you know, so that it sort of had a context. And I think we must have done a good little 15, 20 minutes on the night, and we got a good applause. And then a guy called Lee Carmichael from Mona, one of the creative guys at Mona at the time, was there, and he said, that was fantastic. He said, could you make that into a whole play? And I said, well, I could, but it's going to take some money. And he said, well, I'm from Mona, so yeah, we'll do this. And so we all of a sudden we had a budget, and it wasn't like telephone figures or anything like that, but and I just spent a few days with my brother, just sitting down in a office in Salamanca Place, which is very appropriate, just looking out over the wharves where a lot of those prisoners stepped ashore. And we just sat there for a couple of days and said, well, we had these, you know, 15, 16, 17 songs or whatever. Well, let's just join them, let's join the dots, you know, let's work out how you'd contextualise these songs and put them all into things. So it's a bunch of stories, little stories that tell one big story, and it's the story of a population and how it came to be. And you know, the thing that I think Robert Hughes was trying to get at in The Fatal Shore was that, you know, that it was kind of loaded, this story that got told to us as children about the convicts, that, they were sentenced for stealing a loaf of bread, you know. Yeah, it was kind of loaded, that kind of attitude, and that really what you're trying to say is that there's a variety of outcomes, and there was a variety of reasons they were there in the first place, and a lot of it was very political. The world was changing at that time, you know. There were laws, you know, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, so where populations lived and operated was changing really radically. So there were a variety of reasons that people found themselves on the ships coming to Australia, and some of them were criminals, you know, out and out recidivists, and some of them didn't deserve to be there, you know, and some of them deserved to be there in a technical sense because they'd committed a crime, but they'd committed crimes for very good reasons quite often, you know, because, like I say, the world had changed, and politically speaking, there was a bit of a argy-bargy about who was going to own this new world that was being established. And so that's what I think comes out of a lot of the later Australian history, and that's what the play aimed to sort of to show. And so basically, you know, we set about doing it. So in terms of the dramatic form of the thing and the tone of it, it all kind of happened in 2 or 3 days, you know, like, but then the songs took a lot longer to get together, and then, you know, this will be like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, this will be the 10, we'll get to 10 times of performing it in, you know, in this little run of 4 dates. So hopefully it's something that can keep growing, because something I feel really strongly about, that, you know, I've been able to pull a lot of things together, and I kind of think maybe that's one of my strongest suits, you know, as much as saying, well, I write this sort of song or that sort of song, or I've got this sort of voice or that sort of voice. But I like to think that being able to pull different elements together is, you know, where some of my talent lies.
So once it all came together and you started performing it with all these great performers, Australian musicians, how did that feel? You must have been very satisfied.
It's super satisfying, you know, because they are my sort of contemporaries, and we always had it pegged as something that if we could get it to keep going, that maybe other people would come involved and other songs might find their way into it and out of it, so that ultimately it might just be a format, you know, rather than something written in stone, which hasn't really happened. But yeah, having said that, this time around Claire Ann Taylor's really involved in it, you know, and I really like her, but I've never worked with her. And you know, it's like we were talking before about my solo stuff as opposed to band stuff, and my kind of fallback is always playing with other people, playing in bands. And even now, sometimes I think, yeah, I'd like to go and do some solo stuff, and I'm sure I will sooner or later. I don't know, I just seem to fall back on that. That's my kind of knee jerk, that I just go back. I like playing with other people, and so this is a really good extreme version of that, because there's a lot of people involved. And one of the things that, and if I look back at my career, you know, from very early days, I always sort of never just wanted to be in bands that were just relentlessly male. You know, I always wanted to have females involved. I just think, for whatever reason, I just think the scope of it, seeing, you know, people on stage, I don't know, I can still go and watch a band of, you know, boys, and it doesn't worry me. But for me, I just really always liked being around sort of really good, strong, creative women, and Vandemonian Lags has sort of got that in droves, and the more it's gone on, the more I've recognised that was a really important element of it, you know, and so having Claire Ann Taylor come in is just something I'm just super excited about, because I just think she's such a great force, you know, creatively speaking. So. Yeah.
The other thing that's happening, the Roving Commission, your current band, yep, has a new EP coming out. The single is First Step in a Homeward Direction. There are, I think, 7 tracks, yep, full of covers of other Australian artists. Yeah. And eventually there'll be an album featuring...
The album's just the band. We were kind of... like, I mean... origins or the genesis of this album sort of goes way back to sort of pre-COVID. You know, like we'd made Cold Water DFU, and the one thing about that record, Cold Water DFU, was we made it in Houston, and we came back and, you know, no matter what happened after that, the band sort of fell apart a bit, and then COVID happened. But we just felt that process of that record was something that we were really. And again, me and Wally have talked about this a lot, and we just felt that it was kind of impeccable, you know, that was the way we would like to make records. And so straight away we started planning. We had it all booked in to go and start work on another album in Arizona. Where is it? In not Phoenix. What's the other big town in Arizona? Nah.
Tucson?
God almighty, my brain's gone. Yeah, we were booked in to go and work in Tucson, Arizona. We had a studio picked out, we had a producer, I've been in touch with them, and we had it booked in. And I remember sending emails to this guy and saying, do you want a deposit? You know, do you want 50? Because in Memphis they're really businesslike with this stuff. All the studios there, they want 50% up front as soon as you make the booking. And I was going to this guy, you know, do you want 50% up front? Because, you know, I've got the money and, you know, we want to do this. And he was saying, no, it'll be all right. And then what happened? COVID sort of dropped, and all of a sudden no one was going to Tucson, no one was going anywhere. And so that sort of fell in a heap. And then after coming out of all that, you know, the band just said, oh, we don't really want to go to America anymore, Mick. We just don't feel that it's where we want to go, you know. So we talked about it a lot, and I said, look, I'll try and find a studio. And I was just, you know, I was contacting studios willy-nilly, you know, mainly in England and Europe and stuff. And then just on a whim, you know, I said, yeah, something rang a bell, and I said, oh, Neil Finn's got a studio, hasn't he, in Auckland? And I sort of Googled it, yeah. And oh my God, this studio is amazing, you know, and all this stuff that I knew had been done there. And so I just sent him an email just on spec, just to get some prices and stuff, just to see if they're in. And then Stephen Scram, who's a guy who's out of Victoria, done the last couple of Paul Kelly albums and last couple of Crowded House records. He was working out of the studio at the time, and when the email came in, and he got back to me like, I'm talking within an hour, and said, Mick, he said, I've met you, and I've worked with Ben Franz, and I've worked with Jen Anderson. He goes, this is the studio for you. You've got to come. This is great. You know, you'll love it. And he was just so keen. And so I thought, well, geez, I've got, you know, just weighing it up, you know, I've got a studio in Tucson that no one wants to go to in our band. I've got a bunch of studios in England that won't return my emails. And it's going to cost me a fortune. And then all of a sudden the studio in New Zealand are just really keen. And back to me saying that me and Wally looking at the album we made in Memphis and what we liked about the process, and a lot of it was about going away, you know, and just the accomplishment of getting a band together and going on a big trip together, and you know, that's a big part of it. So all of a sudden the New Zealand thing was in motion, and so basically it was towards the end of last year that we finally found ourselves over there. And making albums is pretty quick these days. You know, it wasn't like when the Wed started. It took months and months to get something that wasn't probably right, that you had to go and redo anyway. Whereas all of a sudden, you know, we were in under 2 weeks, we had this thing kind of pretty much cooking. We've been, having said that, because we knew we wouldn't get out for Christmas, and then it's like you're left with this quandary of, well, we've just done a tour at the end of the year, as we pretty much always do, so when do we bring it out, you know? And it's like bringing it out in March, April didn't sort of thrill anyone, you know, so we said, well, it's mid-year, let's just bring out like a single, and like one decision, you know, informs the next decision. And I kind of was of a mind to almost bring out a bunch of little 7-inch vinyl singles off the record, the way it used to roll. But as everyone said, well, you do that, and then the B-sides, ultimately, you're going to put them on an album and make an album. Why not just bring out one single and put, you know, 6 B-sides on it? And so that's basically how the first single, you know, we'll call it a single, came about, you know. So paradoxically, the other 6 tracks were all recorded in my backyard, you know.
Did you think sonically it's similar or different?
Well, we got Stephen Scrab to mix the lot, which I think was prudent, you know, like, and look, on a technical level, you know, I mean, some of what I do in a studio leaves something to be desired, but I kind of know where to put the mics, you know, and yeah, I mean, it's one of those really weird things. Is it's an amorphous thing to get from. You know, we can record this band, you know, bass guitar, drums, a couple of voices, you know, accordion, violin. I can record them. I can put them all. They've all got a separate track. They're all recorded, and you can mix it up, and it's going to sound pretty good. And then, conversely, I can go to New Zealand with Stephen Scram in the best studio I've worked at in a long, long time. Like Roundhead Studios is a very good studio. Go there and work there, and to the uninitiated, the end results, you know, maybe not that different, but to me, it's really, really different. Yeah, I can hear it, and it's like a reverse exponential curve. You know, it's like so you can get records to that stage, but to get them that next stage, the amount of effort you have to put in is just mammoth. You know, like just to get them that last bit. And in terms of expense and, you know, the equipment, it's pretty outrageous. So people can say, oh, well, this studio's really good, he's got some good mics, he's got some... Yeah, it is good, but Roundhead's going to be better, you know, like whether you're going to hear it or not, I don't know, but it's certainly, to get that little bit extra can sometimes cost a whole lot more, and sometimes it's not worth it, sometimes it is, but I just think I'm still really committed to the whole idea of going away. And the more I'm playing in an older band, the more that has got sort of resonance as a kind of an idea and an ideal, you know, because when you're in a band like Weddings, Parties and Anything and you're 25 years old and you've just been signed to a record company and, you know, the world's just unfolding around you, well, every day of your life you wake up and you're in Weddings, Parties and Anything. Every day I woke up and went, fuck, I'm in Weddings, I'm in a band that's got like a record deal and we're doing tours and we're meeting people and it's great, and I own better guitars than I ever thought I'd own in my life. All these things are unfolding around you. Then all of a sudden, scroll it forward to 45 years and you go, well, you wake up and you go, Jesus, I've got to pay the bills, you know, I've got to take my kid to school. I've got to cook tea. I've got to make sure this and this is done. Or even, you know, like a self-managed career, you know, the admin can be just insurmountable. Or, you know, like a record's coming out, I'm going to have to, you know, the most important person in my life in the next month is probably going to be the person at the local post office, you know, because I'm going to be there with a big bundle of records. I hope I am every day, driving them nuts. And so they're the things that I wake up and think about. So when I want to make a record, at least I want to sort of artificially approach that old system where for those 8-9 days, or 10, well, it was 10 days because we went away for a couple of days just to practice the songs. For those 10 days, I want everyone in this band to wake up and go, I'm in the Roving Commission today. What are you doing today? I'm in the Roving Commission. Whatever I eat for breakfast is going to be, that's going to influence how I feel at rehearsal, because by 11 o'clock we're going to be, you know, locked up in the rehearsal room. So I better eat something good, because I'm going to have to keep my energy level up all day. And we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you know, all day. And are we going to go to the pub tonight? Yeah, we're going to go to the pub because by 8 o'clock we're just going to be, you know, going to want to blow off some steam. And then when you're in the pub, you go, well, we're going to be starting tomorrow at 10 o'clock, so we better go home soon, you know? All those things, like, that's the one product, and it's not people going home with rough mixes and playing it to their mate or to their wife or to their husband and saying, Mick reckons this, Mick reckons that, you know, like, or, you know, oh, geez, Wally played this, what do you think? No other opinions, you know. I mean, I've got that band's together because those 6 opinions kind of matter, and so taking it out of that context is not what you want. So just that, you know, it's a good band, you know, like you go, well, it's a really good band. I've put this band together and I like everyone in the band. They're all good people to be with. This band should be able to make a good record, you know. But the thing that'll stop this band making a good record is if we're in town and everybody drifts off. Because if I book those 8 days in town or the 10 days, right, I can tell you what's going to happen. Someone's going to go, I've got this gig I've been doing on Thursday nights. You know, I don't have to be there till 8 o'clock. You know, is it cool if we still... So we'll get to Thursday night and we'll be cooking and go, oh, shit, so-and-so's got to go off and do their gig. And then, so-and-so's got to take his kids into the hospital because his wife's busy. Whatever. Yeah, there's going to be any amount of shit that's going to happen to any of us that's going to totally distract the process. Whereas by going away, you're there for that. And I didn't have to say it, but I thought I was going to have to say it like, can we have phones off, please, you know, during the day. But everyone was pretty cool about it, you know.
The guitar you're holding, is that your main songwriting instrument? And do you get emotionally attached to your instruments?
Oh, yeah, very much so. This is my main guitar if I'm playing sort of acoustic solo, which in the band I play the semi-acoustic because one of the things of having Brooke Taylor in the band is she's a great rhythm guitarist. And she plays, you know, just really great rhythm guitar. So while I'm not a lead guitarist, it means that it gives me the freedom to sort of play some other stuff and to play mandolin and to play a bit of stuff. And I kind of like the idea that we don't have a lead guitarist because we've got like a pretty busy violin player in Jen Anderson and a pretty busy accordion keyboard player in Mark Wallace, and so it gives those two room to sort of work it out for themselves. And I kind of, you know, you think of like the Go-Betweens or think of the Rolling Stones or even the Triffids, they didn't really have a lead guitarist, and I kind of really like that. But this guitar, it's called an Auden. Auden is a company in England that's only been going maybe 10 years, and they were just a couple of guys, to my knowledge, that I used to see a lot at weddings gigs when the weddings were playing in England a lot, and they used to follow us around. And they were just guys that basically got some money together and bought an old luthier workshop in, I think it's Norwich, or in that part of the world. And they got the shells manufactured in China, but they're really adamant to be upfront about it, and to sort of, so they come with a kind of a guarantee that they're using sort of sustainable woods, that they're not, you know, mining sort of some age-old sort of redwood forest or something like that, and that they come from factories where there's a decent sort of OH&S policy involved. So it comes with this kind of a reassurance, and they take it to England, they finish them in England and put the hardware on them there. And so, yeah, Auden have kind of, in the last few years, I mean, I've played Matins for most of my life, and I still do, and I've still got a few of them, and Brooke's got a couple of them that she plays live, and but just Auden have been sort of really interesting. I just watching that company grow, and they make really great little mandolins, and their mandolins have been particularly useful in the studio for me. So, yeah, they're just a company that I like. I like, you know, the cut of their jib, really. You know, they've been pretty helpful, and yeah, Maiten have also been really helpful to me over the years, and I shouldn't ever discount that they've been really generous with their time and stuff like that. But just being with I guess a younger company, like a newer company, not younger but newer, it's just been great, and just having that contact in the Northern Hemisphere has been really important for me. And they make really nice guitars, you know, and this guitar, the thing I really love about it is you see these, it's had these couple of breaks there, and basically I was in Africa and sort of flying around in Africa, and I had a kind of an altercation with a baggage guy in Nairobi, you know, and I didn't know, when I got back, I hadn't opened the guitar for a week. I just sort of left it there, and I opened it up, and the case was fine, but the guitar was smashed. And the guy just obviously just opened the guitar case and just stomped on it. Yeah, so that was like smashed in, you know. But I had it rebuilt, and by Brendan Mason, who's just always worked on my guitars. And it's a really weird thing to say, but it's just better. It's just a better guitar since it's fixed. So, this is kind of guitar I've written songs on it. Look, I've got this old Maiden CW80, which is their standard guitar, which I bought when I was 16, I reckon. No, around there anyway. And I just had that sort of rebuilt recently, and that's probably, I've written 80% of my songs on that over the years, and that's just like cooking. But that guitar's not going to leave the house as far as I'm concerned. That's my kind of invaluable guitar. But Auden have been really good. Like I said, they've looked after us when we went to record in Auckland. It's a funny thing. I rang them and I said, "Well, I know you've got a distributor over there. Are you interested in getting some guitars there for the session?" And they were really excited about it. And they just delivered all these guitars to the studio, and the studio were just laughing because, you're in Neil Finn's studio. He does own quite a few guitars, I can tell you, and they're all in good nick, And so we had this, like, his room of guitars was about the size of this, and there's 40, 50 guitars in there. But then they had these guitars, and they kind of acquitted themselves quite well, and still found themselves under a number of tracks when there were, $80,000, priceless, like antique Martins and Gibsons, that it just worked better. And I think consequently, someone told me that Neil Finn's playing one of them now, which I know the guys at Auden are just over the moon about, and they just make nice guitars, So
what are you most proud of in your music career?
Just keeping going. I think really, it's like I forget sometimes, when I'm sort of organising stuff, and I go to ring people, and people say, get the message, I'm at work, and I go, I've just been really lucky that it's been my career, So I guess the thing I'm proudest of is the career, that I've just been able to keep going and keep doing it, and keep making records. And, like I've finished recording a record with Brooke and Helsinki. They've got this little duo called The Deserters this week, and I can't stop playing it. It's like these 11 tracks, and it's really strong. I don't know if it's the best record ever made, but whenever you make these records, you feel like they're the best record you ever made. And the fact that I haven't lost that, I haven't lost that feeling of like, this is the best record I've ever made, or I think that's probably the greatest accomplishment, really. I mean, some more money might have been nice at different points in time, but Jesus, we live in a pretty good country, like a pretty affluent country. You look at the world at large and you go, well, to be sort of constantly grumbling about where you are financially is pretty fatuous in terms of looking at where the world is. We're lucky we can own lots of stuff, we can. So that's not the accomplishment, but the accomplishment for me is just that I'm going to make more records and, keep going.
Well, Mick Thomas, thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time.